Hey guys, we're working on a 08 Chevy Suburban. We're going to be doing a CV axle for you. We've got 15mm bolts on the axle there. This one's leaking grease. We've got a 36mm on the axle nut. We're going to take that off. We got an 18mm on the upper ball joint. We got a flathead screwdriver so we can loosen up the or pop these clips off the wheel speed sensor. It's hard to do things with one hand. There we go. We're gonna unclip the wheel speed sensor from up here. I'm gonna get her started and show you what I've done. All right, we've zipped the axle nut off. See, this axle can press in now. If yours is stuck, put an air chisel in the middle of there or a punch and hammer right in that hole. Get it going back and forth. Ball joint nut is off. If yours just spins, you're probably gonna have to apply some heat. We've got our wheel speed sensor disconnected from the clip and the control arm. So now I'm gonna hit right here with a hammer to loosen that ball joint up. I'll show you. Well, to get the ball joint out of the steering knuckle, we need to hit right here. And there it goes. Now we need to get enough room out so we can get this whole axle out of there. Our brake hose is stretched about as far as it'll go. We got the tie rod, but what we're gonna do is zip these 15mm bolts, the 6 of them, off the CV axle there. All right, with those 6 bolts zipped off, you can put your CV axle right in between this bolt and the sway bar link. It'll come down and clear. Now we just gotta push this axle backwards. Kind of jammed in there. Probably got to grab my air chisel and give it a little pop. So we'll set the camera down. So I'm able to do that. Grab my little air chisel. It kind of jammed in there a little bit while I was I gotta fix my stand. There we go. A little pop backwards. And now we're being held up by either the strut or the sway bar link to be able to get our boot through here. Maybe we can't come through. So one or the other has to go. All right, this is how we're gonna get it out of there. Right there on the left side of the sway bar link, right here. These sway bar links, after they've been on so long, they're gonna snap if you try to take them off. So the only thing holding this up, I could pry this down, the control arm, to get more room. But the only thing holding this up is this little bracket with a 10mm right here. Take that off and this axle will drop right out of there. I did loosen the two 15mm on the strut, just loosen them. You can see we got an air gap now. And I can pull down on the control arm to get more room. But when you're putting that new axle in, you want to not hurt your boot at all, like scraping against this or anything. So you want lots of room, as much as possible. So to get it to this position, you got the skinny part of the axle, and you just go over this sway bar. with the skinny part. Get the fat part right here resting on the sway bar in between the control arm. And with this bracket out, it'll fall right out. Alright, so I'll show you the removal. So that was 19 millimeter on the back of the caliper bolts. So this control arm can come up, this control arm can move down. We're touching a little bit on that spring. I'm not too worried about hurting this axle pulling it out. I just need to grab my bar. And a little bar, falls right out, plenty of room. If you got a partner, somebody to pull down, makes it all the easier. Alright, we got our new axle with our new axle nut. Always use a new axle nut. I just got to feed it up there the same way it came out. Pull down on my bar, and she's through. Now we feed it into place. Pull the bar out, it's in the way. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the splines of the axle. Help it slide through that hub easier. Alright, I'd say we're about a half hour in at this point. Now we got to maneuver this axle so that it will get into the steering knuckle. And this is going to be the trickiest part to do by yourself. Oh, maybe not. I got her to slide in. Bada boom. She's in. Set that caliper up there. Alright, so you can see the axle, the stud of the axle is sticking through. Now we just got to line her up. Where she goes here. Grab our 6 bolts. There we go, first one started. Now we're just gonna go around and tighten all 6 of these. You can spin the axle so that you can just get an easy grip right going from here. We'll get those all tightened up. And we'll need torque specs on our axle nut. Alright, we got our bolts started in the axle. I had this all set up, then I stopped to start the camera, and now we've extended the CV axle back here, so it's not in its groove anymore, so that sucks. So I gotta fit that back in there. Oh, looks like we got it. Just a few jams here and there, you know. That's something that might happen to you. So we're going to test the ball joint, see if she's tight. Got a little play in her, that's not good. But we got to get her back together. So push that forward, have your nut handy. Go. Grab a little bar. And we'll pry down on the control arm. And that'll push that ball joint through the hole in the steering knuckle. Get that nut started. There we go, she started. And we've got to line up our strut back into the grooves. We'll grab those. Those were 15 millimeter. Gave it a few taps. And it's not quite lined up. So I might have to grab my little bar. All right, we got to get the bolt holes to line up. The strut is a little to the side. Just got to hold it with my bar. And get it to line up. Again, a lot easier with two people. Oh, she's so close. There we go, we got the first one started. And that's reattaching your hardware that you loosened, the ball joint and the strut. Yo! Alright, we got our ball joint tightened down. I had to take my bar and press down hard while turning a ratchet, 18 millimeter ratcheting wrench. You can use a regular wrench to get that to start, because the play in the ball joint just kept on spinning the stud of the ball joint. So with a lot of downward pressure on the control arm, you can spin that nut on. So I was holding it hard with one hand and turning the wrench with the other. So I got that nice and tight now. Strut bolts are nice and tight. 6 axle bolts back here, nice and tight. I've got the axle nut snugged down, not torqued down yet. After it gets on the ground, take the center cap out of your rim, torque it down to 177 foot-pounds. That applies 2000 to 2014 four-wheel drive. All right, so we got our wheel speed sensor wire and our caliper. Make sure not to twist up that brake hose. We're gonna put our caliper back on. And we gotta push in the slide hardware on the caliper mount to get that in. Then we got our 19 millimeter caliper bolts that are going to go in there. Try to get them started. Might have to play with the caliper a little bit. We got to put our brake hose clamp down here with the 10 millimeter hold down bolt. That's started. And then we got to clip our wheel speed sensor back together here. We'll clip that. There we go. Goes in its little clamp here on the control arm. Clip together. All right, so I'm gonna pump the brake pedal a couple times because I might have decompressed the caliper a little bit, taking it off before I do anything. So yeah, tighten the brake caliper back down. Tighten that 10 mil back down. Make sure everything's hooked up right. Double check everything. Put it on the ground. Put the tire on. Those were 22 millimeter on the lug nuts. Put it on the ground. Torque down your axle nut. Pump the brakes a few times, and that should do it.